Hi guys, with all the fans being off here at the moment, things are getting very warm, and that's why I want to try to make this take count, and I said this already like 10 times. Okay, what this video was going to be initially was a review of the Sony a7S Mark II that I had for 2 weeks, but since I was so slammed with other review devices during that period, I just didn't get the time to properly test it. I did make some footage, and I used it actually as my main camera for my last like 10 reviews. So you can check that quality if you just check the videos. And I also saw a few other reviews from professionals, and I'm definitely not going to pretend to be one. And I've seen so much information there and so much great stuff that I won't or never would be able to deliver you anyway. So what I will do is give you my pros and cons and talk about my experience of using this camera as a beginner, maybe a amateur at best. So I won't be able to give you any in-depth information, but maybe it's also interesting to see what a beginner thinks of a high-end camera like the a7S Mark II. So I will start with my pros and cons list. So the first pro that I have is an amazing shallow depth of field, because as a YouTuber that usually makes videos like these, for me, it was very important that the background is very blurred out. With my old camera, and especially with the kit lens that I had on my Panasonic G7, I didn't get that at all. Now, as you are watching this video right now, I have the 25mm with 1.7 aperture, and it looks already a lot more blurred out, but it didn't even get close to the level or the nice shallow depth of field that the a7S Mark II had with the 50mm lens that I got. It wasn't maybe the perfect lens, but it did a really great job, but that was the only one that I had available. So this was really great to see, and especially if you want the blurred out back for your videos, this did really impress me. Of course, you pay a lot for that as well. The other thing was, of course, amazing video quality, which is obvious because no matter what I do with this camera, I didn't quite get the cinematic look for some reason that I easily achieved with that camera. So you can just go back and see some of my videos that I used it, because the last 10 videos or so I did with that. Of course, as many reviewers already pointed out, it has an amazing low light performance, and I've checked that in my living room, which is quite dark, and yeah, it's impressive, but that is not the main important thing for me. If you are always out where it's dark, it's definitely a great bonus, but here in my controlled environment, that's something not that important for me. The next one would be the remote app that is available. You get one for the iPad and I guess as well for Android, but it is a very limited app, which is also something later that I will talk about in my cons, but it's nice that it is there. Yeah, that's at least something. The next thing, the electronic viewfinder was quite good. It was quite sharp, bright, and it was very realistic. So what you saw was also at the end what you did get as a result. So I was very pleased with that. The screen itself was just okay, I would say. The next point was many customizable function keys. So I had more than enough. This was all good. And the button placement and all that was quite okay. The rotating wheels, some of them were a little bit oddly placed, so I didn't really like those in terms of convenient usability. That's where I think Panasonic does a way better job in easier handling, so I always had to check where all the buttons and switches were. Okay, the next thing, premium hefty weight. I'm not quite sure about the actual weight of it, but it felt so much heavier than my Panasonic G7 does, but in a great way, because it felt so premium. Of course, also due to the metal body, but this has also a con that I will talk later about. Then good size, I liked it in the hand. It wasn't too small, it wasn't too big, and you could really comfortably hold it for a longer period of time. Yeah, that was fine. Then what was really important for me, or at least very nice for me to see, was that it stores the video in one single huge file. Because what is very annoying for me on the Lumix G7, if I use maybe 4K or 1080p, after 4 gigabytes it cuts off the video and makes a second file. And I really like that it made just one huge, like even 8 or 10 gigabyte file on the Sony. This is just more convenient to use. You didn't have the splits, and it was way easier to use in post, so I really like that as well. We also had 4K with 100 Mbit if your card supports it, and even though one of my cards is actually a U3 card, it didn't work. With my other card it did, so just keep in mind you need the fastest card, at least from a terms of classification, but it should be an official one. Also, the placement of the SD card was really nice because it was on the side, because on my Panasonic here, for example, as well, I have to always take it off the tripod, which was really convenient on the Sony because I just could use it on the side. That was something really nice to see. And as my last pro, fantastic working autofocus in video, because I could actually use this also as my overhead cam that I used to film my devices, because it was not quite fast as my camcorder, but it did a really great job. Because, for example, if you record a device, it gave you this amazing shallow depth of field, and with the quite good fast autofocus for a cam like this, I was very pleased. So I think it's time to go now to the cons. The first obvious one is that we pretty much get on any Sony device or camera very poor battery life. I got maybe like 1 hour of use with one battery, and I was quite happy that I got a second one for the review unit. The second thing, the remote app, it is very limited, because maybe the one on the Panasonic here isn't super capable as well, but you can pretty much do everything that is necessary. On the Sony, you could change, of course, things like aperture and exposure and ISO and something like that, but I couldn't really conveniently switch to touchscreen mode and something like that, which is also actually the next thing, the fully articulating touchscreen that we don't have, because the touchscreen itself maybe isn't that important, because I don't use it that often on my camera as well, but the fully articulating thing would have been really handy, because especially if I film myself, it would have sometimes come in handy just to check something really quick. Usually I use something like the iPad anyways, and I guess every pro will use an external monitor or external recording device anyway, so it's not a huge thing, but it would have been definitely a nice bonus. What else? The weight. It can be fatiguing because it was quite hefty, and I said it was premium, but for example, when I went out in the forest and used it for a longer period of time around my neck, or when I held it in the hand, it got a little bit exhausting. The next thing, settings menu. I think a lot of people talk about, and I saw this in a lot of different reviews, can be overburdening and a little bit too much, and you definitely need a lot of time to know where you can find which setting. I get that, but actually I didn't find it to be that bad. Yes, there were tons of settings here, but I didn't really use like maybe 10% of them. So of course, if you are a pro, you will use a lot more of them. But if you are a pro and if you use this as your main cam for a longer period of time, you will get used to it, because then you know where to look for it. And even for someone like me who used it for just 2 weeks, it was good enough. The few things that I needed, I found quite okay. So it's not bad, but it's needed to be said. Also, expensive lenses. From what I got on different channels, it is quite expensive to get good cameras, because either you need an adapter or you need the lenses that are quite expensive. I personally can't say so much about that. I got one that costs around 330 euros, which for the quality it gave me was, I think, very fair, so I can't really judge too much on that. No fully manual mode. That was something that was a little bit odd for me to see, because on my even quite cheap Panasonic G7 I can do everything manually, so aperture, exposure, ISO and everything like that. But on the Sony it always seems like some certain things are tied together, because if you use, for example, one thing in manual mode, then something else is always in auto mode, and if that thing is in manual, then something else is in manual and auto mode. So that was a little bit confusing. The good thing though was that the things that were in auto mode actually worked that well that it wasn't that big of an issue. Of course, if you are a pro that needs everything be fully manually, then it will be a bummer. For me it was okay, because it actually made my life easier, because I could just use manually what I needed to, and the rest I just could rely on the camera, and it did a good job. But it would have been nice to have at least that option, but it is a little bit limited in that kind of way. So many interfering settings, that was something that was really odd for me, because when I was, for example, in the manual mode and wanted to change or set the white balance in a manual mode, it told me, no, you can't do this here. So you have to go in some specific mode where you can actually set the white balance, and you can change the white balance presets in every mode, but you can't set it. So this was a little bit weird. So you had to switch kind of around if you wanted to set the white balance. So that was a little bit of an odd thing for me to see, because it should have been a little bit easier to get, because in so many modes when I wanted to access some certain feature, it told me, no, you can't do this here. No, you can do this here. But the odd thing is I didn't know in which mode I could actually use it. So it's a little bit of fiddling around. You really need to know in which mode you can do what. But it would have been definitely really nice if there would be a kind of tip where it would just say, you can't use this here, but in these, yeah. Of course, as a pro, you will get used to that as well. And the last con maybe would be the price, because here, at least the body in Germany is at around 3,500 euros. This is just the body, which is expensive, but I guess this is definitely a video professional focused camera, and it will pay off after quite a while. For me, it's definitely overkill. I would never be able to spend it or justify that kind of money, because even something like the Panasonic G7 that I paid like 700 euros for was already way too much that I would really need for. But if I would be a lot more into cinematic video and like things like that, then if I would be a bigger channel, it would definitely pay off after a while. The easy videos like I do here without any cuts or anything special, it just makes no sense, and even this camera is good enough, but it is needed to be pointed out. So in the end, I want to get to one thing: how was my experience using the cam? As a total beginner, not being a pro, for pictures, because this is a very video focused camera, but I also used it in the forest for pictures, and I have to say the experience was really nice. It was a little bit unfortunate that I only had a prime lens that was fixed, so I couldn't really make too many changes here in terms of the focus or the zoom that I had. But the pictures that I got were really easy to get, really nice pictures, and it was really impressive, the amount of background blur, and you could focus really easily. Autofocus worked really nice, the manual focus worked really nice. So the overall use, just that, even for a beginner like me, was quite convenient for video as well, because if you just do pretty much the same every time, you just have to set it up once, and then you just turn it on, maybe pair it with your app again, and that's it. So if I would have had this camera for a little bit longer, found out the few little details and a few little tweaks to get the best picture possible, I would have been able to get even better results. But even not having made that step and not having gotten all the tweaks, just turning it on, setting the white balance, the aperture, the brightness to a level that looks okay, I got already more than impressive outcomes, and way better than whatever I could achieve on this camera right now. Of course, the price difference is big, but I think if you are into the best possible video outcome, this is a legit cam. I personally can't really compare it to anything else yet besides this one, because I just started using a, let's say, proper camera like half a year ago. Usually I was also only used to camcorders, so I can't do this. But I hope to get the chance in the future to get a little bit more different device, because I will try to get the A6300, which I should get, and maybe the 7R Mark II. But I would also like to try different brands, like for example Panasonic, also Canon and so on. But since my channel here is very mobile driven, like smartphones, tablets and laptops, this will be a hard step for me to get done, especially since this review wasn't a real review of the camera itself. You didn't really see anything of the quality. I know there are a few channels that pretty much just talk into the camera as well, but if you want to get views on a camera review, you definitely need to give proper information. But there are already so many great reviews out there for this camera, and that's why I thought it wouldn't be necessary for me to even try that, because I would never be able to achieve that level. But what I can give you is maybe some of the opinions of a beginner and share my experience that I had with this camera. So I think I gave you that. If you have any questions or something to tell me in the comments, just leave that, and I can definitely tell you that I would have wished to have such a camera in my gear box, but that's not ever gonna happen, at least not anytime soon with my slow channel. But therefore it would be nice if you leave this a like, and I would like to get a lot of views on this, so I could maybe in the future get a few more cameras, because I'm definitely starting to get really excited about this. But as for right now, I'm a small mobile focused channel, so these things are definitely not a regular thing. Not for now. Okay, this was it. Once again, please like, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, enjoy your day. Until next time, bye.